Copper pipe, tube, and fittings. No matter where you live in Chicago, no matter if you live in a high-rise on Lakeshore Drive, or if you live in a Georgian in West Rogers Park, or a bungalow in Mayfair, or a workman's cottage in Pilsen, someplace, somewhere in your house, there's going to be some copper tubing, or some pipe, or some fittings. And it doesn't make a difference if that house is 80 years old, or if it's 8 months old. Someplace along the line, there's some copper. And where can that be used? The copper in your house is used for a lot of different applications. First of all, anybody who has running water has a water service coming into your house or your building. And we're going to and today, we're going to be talking about residential, because copper is used for municipalities, it's used in industrial, it's used in commercial, but we'll concentrate on residential use. So everybody who's running water has a water service coming into their house. And you can see that service coming up. And typically what that service, if it's an older house, 30 years old, 35 years old, 100 years old, 80 years old, what that service most likely is going to be a lead service. Now from that lead service, which is a malleable piece of lead that's feeding the water from the city, from city water into your house, then there's going to be a transition of some kind. And that transition is done a couple of different ways. Typically a skilled plumber would do something called a lead wipe, which was required a lot of skill, a lot of training, and a lot of experience. That would make the transition from that lead pipe typically to a valve of some kind. This is a relatively small valve. This is only a 1-inch valve. A lot of the old services were actually relatively small services. Most services now are actually much bigger than this. What they would do is they do a lead wipe that would make the transition from that lead malleable piping that was coming up either through the floor or through the foundation to some kind of valve. And that valve is called the main. And then from there, it would kind of go on to other parts in the house. Typically, there'll be horizontals that be running parallel with the basement ceiling, and it would be feeding to the water heater, to the boiler, and anything to bathrooms, kitchens, powder rooms, laundry rooms, silcocks outside. And typically, that was done with galvanized steel pipe. It's very, very seldom that you would see galvanized steel pipe used now in new construction. You will see it in some high-rise work. You will see it in some commercial and some industrial work, but we're not talking about that. For the most part now, any kind of residential work that you're going to see being done in your house, in your building, is going to be done in copper. Now, what kind of copper is sold, and what kind of copper is used in Chicago and all over the country? Copper comes in we'll think of two different varieties. It comes in soft copper, and like the name implies, it's soft. It's soft and it's malleable, and it comes in coils. And it comes in a lot of different sizes. It comes as small as 1/8 inch, and it goes up as big as you want it to be. For instance, now, when you have a water service, you need a new water service in your house. You call your plumber. Your plumber will come out there, and what he'll do is he'll say, yes, you have a lead service, we're going to run you a new service. In order to do that, he's going to trench probably parallel with the lead service that you have now, and he'll be running type K copper, which is a heavy, soft copper. Obviously a lot bigger than this, because this is only 1/4 inch. You may have 1.5 inches, it may be 1.25 inches, it might be a 2-inch type K water main. And that'll be feeding water into your house. So copper comes in soft, like we see here. This happens to be utility copper, which is about the lightest kind of copper that you can buy. Copper like this here, you definitely, or you most likely, have this in your house. If you have an ice maker at the back of your refrigerator, if you have filtered water, if you have a humidifier on your furnace, most likely you are utilizing 1/4 inch copper to feed one of those three things. If you don't have soft copper in your house, then most likely you have hard copper. Hard copper this is hard copper, like the name implies. It's not malleable, you can't bend it, it's not meant to be bent. Copper is sold, at one time, was sold in 20-foot lengths. That's when plumbers drove trucks that had pipe racks on them. Steel pipe, like galvanized steel pipe, came in 21-foot lengths. Copper came in 20-foot lengths. with the advent of the small service vans, the small little utility vans, the copper manufacturers and the mills started selling it to us and other wholesalers and to the plumbers, to the end users, in 10-foot lengths. Here at Clark Devon, we know there's a lot of times that you may not need 10 feet of copper. You may only need 5 feet of copper. You might only need 30 inches of copper. So for you, for our customers, that's how we'll sell it to you. We'll sell you a 10-footer, we'll sell you a 5-footer, or we'll sell you a 30-inch piece. Now this hard copper is available in a lot of different sizes. What we stock over here is 1/2 inch, which is this here. This is 1/2 inch. We also stock 3/4. We stock 1 inch. We stock 1 1/4 inch, 1.5 inches, and 2 inch. And why do we stock those sizes? Well, first of all, it's the most commonly used size for residential use. Most of the main runs in your house or in your apartment building or wherever it may be is probably going to be a 1-inch run, which will be a horizontal, branching off to 3/4, and then going out to 1/2 inch, within 6 feet of the termination, which is the last fixture. Be it a toilet, be it a lavatory, be it a kitchen sink, be it a laundry tub, be it a silcock outside, be it even makeup water for a hydronic, which is a small little hot water boiler. So that's what we stock those sizes. Now this stick copper, or this hard copper, is it available in different varieties? Yes, it is. The most common varieties are type L, type M, and DWV. Now type L is the heaviest copper that we're talking about here. Type L copper is typically what you would be using for water distribution. It can be used for hot, it can be used for cold, but typically this is the kind of copper that you'd be using for water distribution. Now, if for hydronic or for drains, wastes, and vents, you oftentimes would be using not this size, but you'd be using type M copper. Type M copper is lighter in weight. So if you were to take a piece of 1/2 inch copper, like this here, which is type M copper, and you can tell it's type M copper that the lettering on it is red. It says type M on it. Type L copper will always have blue lettering on it, and it'll say L on it. That's heavier copper. Now, code has been changed in Chicago so that you can use type M copper for water distribution. We still recommend, and most plumbing contractors still recommend, the use of type L copper for water distribution, type M copper for drainage, waste, and vents, and for hydronic heat. Does everybody, for those of you who are not familiar with hydronic heat is a boiler. You have a boiler. You have either, your termination pieces are either cast iron baseboard or copper baseboard. That's typically what it is, and you can use type M copper for hydronic heat. Now there's also a difference in fittings. The difference in fittings is really pretty glaring too. Since you can use copper for water distribution, and you can also use it for drains, for wastes, and vents, there's different fittings for that. To give you an idea, this is a T. Looks like a T, feels like a T, it's a T. Now they're both 2-inch copper Ts. Now that's where the similarity ends. This is a DWVT. The DWV stands for drains, wastes, and vents. Those three things are very different. And we can explain that at a different time, but they're three very different things. But they're essentially water that's leaving your house, not coming in. This is a DWVT, and this is a pressure T. Pressure T would be if you're delivering water, you're distributing water in a building. Or for hydronic heat, this is what you'd be using. For the drain, waste, and vents, you would use this here. Now, other than the fact that they look different, you can see there's a sweep on here. Now, that sweep is always going essentially downstream, where you want that water to be flowing. And that's pretty much how you can read things too. If I opened up your wall and I saw a branch there, and I saw the T sitting like this, it would tell me that essentially there's the vent going up here because of the way that I'm reading it. If it was like this, it would tell me there's the drain. A fitting like this one over here is not directional. So you can think of this as a directional fitting, a non-directional fitting. There's also a significant difference in weight between these. If you feel this one here and you feel this one here, there's a significant difference in weight. Now those fittings, you're going to find those difference in fittings only in the larger diameter fittings. You'll find them 1.25 inches. You'll find them 1.5 inches. You'll find them in 2 inch. The reason for that is anything smaller than that is not typically used for drains, wastes, and vents, unless maybe it's a condensate drain, and then really is no matter, and it really is not pertinent. It won't affect it in any way, any shape, or any form. Now in your house, since you probably have some steel pipe in your house, there may be a time when you want to add a bathroom. You have some steel pipe that's rotted out. You want to just do some remodeling work. So here's a piece of 3/4 inch galvanized pipe. And you'd say, you know what, my plumber or I want to be running some copper from this point over here to there when I want to add a bathroom. There's got to be a way to make that transition, right? Well, there's any number of ways to do it. You would think that the easiest way to do it would be to take something like a female adapter, which is what we have over here. Female adapter, just like the name implies, it's an adapter with female threads in here. This is a 3/4 by 12 inch galvanized steel nipple. So you'd say, all right, this will be easy enough to do. I'll take this fitting over here, I'll dope it up, meaning I'll put some pipe dope on it. I'll screw it on here, and I'll just keep going. I'll run with it. Will it work? Absolutely. Does it conform to code? No. Will it work for a long time? Possibly, but not likely. And why is that? Some people here already know. We have galvanized steel and we have copper. These are two very dissimilar metals. These are two metals that are not meant to be in direct contact with each other. When they are in direct contact with one another, what happens is you have electrolysis occur. That electrolysis does one of two things, or both things. It rots out and pits the copper pipe, and it rots out the threads on the galvanized. So there has to be a way to make that transition. And how do you make that transition between these two dissimilar metals? There's a couple different ways to do it. One of the ways to do it is to take a valve, a threaded valve, this happens to be a sweat valve, but a threaded valve, thread a valve onto the galvanized, and then take that male adapter that we're talking about, screw the male adapter into the other side of the valve and run with it. The brass will break up the contact between the galvanized steel and the copper. And it's actually a very effective way to do it. But you may not need a valve. You might not want a valve. It may be a place where you shouldn't have a valve. So how do you do it? Another way to do it would be to take a brass fitting, like a union. You could take a union, and that also works. The union screws onto the galvanized nipple, take the male adapter on the backside, and run with it. And the most common way to do it is by using a dielectric union.